pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clerk, please call the roll.
Monica Duran,
Here.
Christy Davis,
Here.
Zachary Urban,
Present.
Tim Fitzgerald,
Here.
Janice Hoppy,
Present.
Larry Matthews,
Here.
George Pond,
Present.
and Genevieve Wooden.
Present.
Madam Mayor, we have a quorum.
Thank you. Are there any changes to the council minutes of October 9th, 2017? Seeing none, they stand approved as presented. We're going to move right into proclamations and ceremonies. And I have one to read. They always make these for taller people than I. This is in regard to local small businesses. Whereas the city of Wheat Ridge, Colorado celebrates our local small businesses and the contributions they make to our local economy and community. According to the United States Small Business Administration, there are currently 28.8 million small businesses in the United States. They represent 99.7% of all businesses with employees in the United States and are responsible for 63% of net new jobs created over the past 20 years. And whereas small businesses employ 48% of the employees in the private sector in the United States, and whereas on average 33% of consumers' holiday shopping will be done at small, independently owned retailers and restaurants, and whereas 91% of all consumers believe that supporting small, independently owned restaurants and bars is important. Whereas advocacy groups, as well as public and private organizations across the country, have endorsed the Saturday after Thanksgiving as Small Business Saturday. Now, therefore, I, Joyce J., Mayor of the City of Wheat Ridge, and the City Council do hereby proclaim November 25, 2017 as Small Business Saturday. I don't think we have a representative here. No, we don't. Quite often we do. Okay. Now I believe we're supposed to have a swearing-in ceremony, or changing of the guards is up. Bring on the hats. Here comes our judge.
Patrick, how do you want to stage it so we can get pictures?
I think Kate can come down here. Sarah? Yeah, do you want to use the mic so it's on camera?
Yeah, thanks.
Yes.
So Ms. Dozeman, where are you? Come up. And Ms. Dozeman, is anybody taking pictures? They can come up as, okay. All right, you know what, come over here, right here, so we can get you on this. Yeah, and what else? All right, raise your right hand, please. I, Leah Dozeman,
I, Leah Dozeman,
do solemnly and sincerely declare
do solemnly and sincerely declare
and affirm that I will support the Constitution
and affirm that I will support the Constitution
and laws of the United States,
and laws of the United States,
the state of Colorado,
the state of Colorado,
and the charter and ordinances of the city,
the charter and ordinances of the city,
and will faithfully perform
and will faithfully perform
the duties of City Council Member,
the duties of City Council Member,
District 4,
District 4,
which I am about to assume.
which I am about to assume.
Congratulations. Pick him up, okay? It's okay. All right, we gotta sign this. There's one for you and one for the city, so there's two there. Who gets the fancy one?
She gets the fancy one.
All right, Tim Fitzgerald is next. All right, sir, come up. Please raise your right hand. Ready?
I'm ready.
I, Tim Fitzgerald,
I, Tim Fitzgerald,
do solemnly and sincerely declare
do solemnly and sincerely declare
and affirm
and affirm
that I will support the Constitution and laws
that I will support the Constitution and laws
of the United States,
of the United States,
the state of Colorado,
the state of Colorado,
and the charter and ordinances of the city,
the charter and ordinances of the city of Wheat Ridge,
and will faithfully perform the duties of city council member,
and will faithfully perform the duties of city council member,
District 3,
District 3,
which I am about to assume.
which I am about to assume.
Congratulations again. Two copies, one for you and one for file folder. So, let me sign them both. You can take the nice one. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, Mr. Zachary, Councilman Zachary Urban. Raise your right hand, sir, and repeat after me. I, Zachary Urban,
I, Zachary Urban,
do solemnly and sincerely declare
do solemnly and sincerely declare,
and affirm that I will support the Constitution,
say that again,
that I will, and affirm
and affirm
that I will support the Constitution and laws of the United States,
and laws of the United States,
the state of Colorado,
the state of Colorado,
and the charter and ordinances of the city,
the charter and ordinances of the city,
and will faithfully perform the duties of city council member,
and will faithfully perform the duties of city council member,
District 2,
District 2,
which I am about to assume.
which I am about to assume. So help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
No, he's got his own fancy pen there. All right, Councilman Hoppy, Janice Hoppy. You ready?
Yeah.
All right, raise your right hand. I, Janice Hoppy,
I, Janice Hoppy,
do solemnly and sincerely declare
do solemnly and sincerely declare
and affirm
and affirm
that I will support the Constitution and laws
that I will support the Constitution and laws
of the United States,
of the United States,
the state of Colorado,
the state of Colorado,
and the charter and ordinances of the city,
and the charter and ordinances of the city,
and will faithfully perform the duties of city council member,
and will faithfully perform the duties of city council member,
District 1,
District 1,
which I am about to assume.
which I am about to assume.
Congratulations.
And here.
You are welcome. All right, oath of office for Mr. Bud Starker. You ready? Here we go.
Ready.
I, Bud Starker,
I, Bud Starker,
do solemnly and sincerely declare
do solemnly and sincerely declare
and affirm
and affirm
that I will support the Constitution and laws
that I will support the Constitution and laws
of the United States,
of the United States,
the state of Colorado,
the state of Colorado,
and the charter and ordinances of the city,
and the charter and ordinances of the city,
and will faithfully perform the duties of mayor,
and will faithfully perform the duties of mayor,
which I am about to assume.
which I am about to assume.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Sign both, keep this one, okay? Backwards.
Thank you, Judge Randall. I'm not sure, did you introduce yourself?
Say that again?
Did you introduce yourself? I don't think you did.
No, good evening, folks. I'm the judge for the city. I'm Chris Randall. I've been here ages. Welcome all to coming to the celebration. That's nice.
Thank you, Chris. Before we go on any further, we have a quick little presentation we would like to show you all in recognition of our two outgoing elected officials. So, Sarah, please roll. Please shut the lights off too, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah and staff, for putting that together. That brings back some memories. Boy, there was a lot going on over the last 4 years. You're very busy. So on behalf of myself, city manager, and the rest of our staff, I want to thank you both. It's been a pleasure to work with you both. I think we've accomplished a lot in the last 4 years and 8 years that you've been representing the city. So we have a few items that we'd like to give you as parting gifts, and also want to thank Janice Smothers for putting this event together this evening. So, and these gifts for you. So, we have a framed photo of our renowned and famous and wonderful Greenbelt, which is a picture that we give to outgoing elected officials. So you can hang that in your home with joy. And some flowers.
Seeing all those photos, Jen, we did a lot. We really did. We had a lot of fun. I can't say it makes me sad, but it also pleases me so much the last 4 years, the 8 years altogether. What a pleasure it's been to be with the city, to work with a wonderful staff, a couple of great councils. It's just been fun, and God, what a wonderful sense of purpose. It's just been terrific. So hard to walk away from so many wonderful people that I've met. I hope I get to see them as I bump down the road a little bit. But it's just been fun, and thank you all so much.
And Genevieve Wooden.
Well, thank you, everyone. And this has been a really quick 4 years, and it's been a wonderful 4 years. And I honestly wish that every citizen would have the chance to sit up here and be part of the democratic process and be part of governing your city. And it might change your mind about how things work and how you view your city. So thank you to council that I had the pleasure of serving with. Thank you to the citizens that elected me. Thank you to the citizens that supported me so much all during the last 4 years. And thank you so much to our city staff. We have a wonderful city staff, and they answered every question right away. They gave us so much information, and they were always available. And we have a wonderful staff. Thank you to all of them. It's been a great 4 years.
You guys need to go in there as incoming? I don't know. I think she said incoming. I don't know what she said. Do you want incoming and outgoing? Did I move it the wrong way? Yeah. Zach, and you might go too.
Well, it's too late.
You're incoming.
All right, now you are doing.
Maybe incoming and outgoing now.
I'm not going.
Why Christy's not? I'm not going.
Shh. Christy's leaving.
Thank you. If I may take just a moment of personal privilege, I'd like to thank our outgoing mayor and Genevieve Wooden for a job well done, and thank you for your service to our city. I'd like to also recognize and celebrate the citizens of Wheat Ridge who voted in this fall's election. Voting is a cornerstone of our democracy, and I truly am honored that you voted. I'd like to recognize all the candidates who ran in the election. Running is not easy. It takes courage. They deserve our respect and our thanks. I would like to congratulate the candidates who have returned to office. I look forward to serving together with you on this council. I'd like to recognize my opponent, who ran an honest and a hard-fought campaign, and I hope he will continue to serve in leadership and in service to our city. Our city faces many challenges and many opportunities. Together, we can seek creative solutions which will come from many directions. As your mayor, I will try to foster an atmosphere of open dialogue and collaboration. I will seek to be a good moderator, promote constructive and pragmatic discourse. And I will try to make these council proceedings fair and friendly to the people that come into this chamber. I'm honored and humbled for the trust that you place in me as your mayor. I ask for your understanding and your help to make this council successful so that together we make great decisions for a great city. Thank you. Okay. Our next order of business is citizens' right to speak. And I have a list here. And our first speaker is Dorothy Archer. And if you would please come to the podium, and when you get to the podium, please give us your name and your address.
My name is Dorothy Archer. Address is 3640 Marshall Street. Good evening, Mayor Starker, council, staff, and citizens. First, I want to personally thank our newly elected people. God bless you. You got a big job. I want to remind our citizens, especially who watch Channel 8, that next Monday, November the 20th, the issue of the 35-foot flat roof dwellings will be taken under study. Your presence and voices are needed to let the council know how you feel about this issue. It's important that they know that every residential zone in Wheat Ridge, excluding R1C and R, are allowed to go up 35 feet with a flat roof, 5 feet from your property line. This still is overwhelming, even though R1C and R have added a 15-foot bulk plane. East Wheat Ridge is extremely vulnerable. I did a study of the map east of Wadsworth and counted approximately 1,000 houses in the zone of R2 alone. Many of those front lots are 50, 75, and 100 feet. A 35-foot, 3-story, flat roof home 5 feet from your next door neighbor is overwhelming. I think many of you have seen this in North Denver. The meeting next Monday will start at 6:30. Please arrive a little bit early to sign in and speak. Council needs to know how you feel. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Mr. John Clark.
I am John Clark, 4665 Swadley, District 4. I guess I'm here tonight because you guys couldn't vote me away, could you? as much as you guys probably would if given the chance. So before I congratulate everybody, I'd like to start by saying the other night I was at the Wheat Ridge High School Showcase Night, where all the 8th graders and 8th grade parents come in and take a look at the school, and I was pleased. Auditorium was full. It looks like it's going to be very exciting next year. Hopefully our numbers grow again. So that big building out there on 32nd that some of the candidates found in the last few months on their campaign trail, I hope you remember where it's at. It's our only high school. And as I do congratulate each and every one of you that won, there's winners and losers. And I'm not afraid to say that I supported Matt and Erica for school board, and they both lost, so nothing changed up at Jefferson County School Board. Excuse me. And within a couple days of The Song Remains the Same, they decided they were going to screw Wheat Ridge schools again. So that's coming up. They're looking at putting an arts school at the old Sebeski at 20th and Kipling. If you think that won't pull kids out of Wheat Ridge High School and Everett Middle School, you're wrong. It will. It'll pull very talented art kids and music kids out of Wheat Ridge High School. So they're at it again. You didn't change anything. You didn't move anything. So the same board is going to do the same thing to the same Wheat Ridge schools for the next 2 years. So hopefully somewhere down the road we figure that out. So the last thing is, and I didn't even notice it until I was looking at the agenda, somewhere, I think it's 4 or 5, you guys are talking about speed bumps, traffic calming devices. So I'd just like to say before I go that there's probably one thing that Guy Namiash and myself and Christine Disney will all agree upon, one thing in this city: the traffic calming devices that we use do not work. The slalom course and the speed bumps do not work. Please ask the engineers at the city. Ask somebody that lives in front of one. So, thanks, guys. Congratulations.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Ms. Rachel Hulteen.
Good evening, my name is Rachel Hulteen, and I live at 4690 Balsam Street. And I just am here tonight to, first of all, congratulate everybody who won their races. And especially I want to thank my opponent, Zach Urban, for making it an exciting campaign. I think it's an exciting time in our city when we can have so many people running for council and for mayor, and to have most of us all know one another. And it just really reminded me that Wheat Ridge is a city, and it's a community, and in so many ways it's a family. And I also want to thank, even though they've left, I really want to thank Mayor Jay and ex-councilwoman Wooden. It's really under Mayor Jay that I learned how to passionately love this city. And she taught me how to show up and to sometimes have to be feisty, and how to just keep getting out there and keep talking to more people. And I think it's really an admirable trait, and I hope all of us can learn something from her leadership. And I'm looking forward to the leadership that's ahead of us. So thank you, everyone. It was a really great election, and now we're off to the races. And I am now going to say something. John's still in the room. Maybe this is the only thing that Guy, Christine, John and I all agree on. I really do ask the city to take a look at their traffic calming program. There's a lot of new methods that are out there, and some of them are incredibly cost effective. So I'm excited that the city's continuing it, and I think it's much needed. There's a huge problem in our city around cut-through traffic. So with the investments we're making in our neighborhoods, to reevaluate them to be a more proactive approach as well and not just responsive, but really take a look at what are some, particularly problematic streets in our city, and to step back and really evaluate what's the whole range of options, and really help identify things that are going to make a difference. So thank you, Council and Mayor and the City of Wheat Ridge.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mr. Jesse Hill.
Jesse Hill, 2995 Chase Street. I welcome this new council and our new mayor to Wheat Ridge. Really look forward to working with you all. Your success. For the new members, I'm usually here to discuss process, not the specific policy items out there. And to the citizens, this is another part of the overall process we do in democracy, along with electing our new leaders. So come on up here and attend meetings when you can. I really appreciate it. So. Our council members, I believe, appreciate it. But here today, kind of talk about, I guess, I don't know how much of a rumor it is or what, but apparently the next study session, we're having a talk on code updates, possibly the zoning code. I'm not sure exactly what, because nothing's been posted on it, so there's some rumors spreading around there. And again, where my problem starts with the process is, a couple council members got together with their constituents, which is great. I encourage that. Gave them a survey. Again, good stuff, working out with there. But we ended up getting that onto the city website, and that's in a biased format and kind of targeted to a specific group out there, rather than putting it in our annual survey or biannual survey, which is scientifically done and done by an outside group who knows how to formulate questions and to get a real consensus of the neighborhood. So it just a little irks me on it. The second is, I kind of woke up learning about all this stuff, feeling punched in the gut. You guys spent a lot of time, I spent a lot of time, staff last year, regarding bulk plan in R1C, in our district out there. And at the end of the day, I guess council either punted or however it went, but we settled on something, R1C, on heights and on the code. And, personally, I went out there and I spent, 10 grand working up designs for a house that I want to live in. Good stuff. There's more pages to all this stuff. It's a full set. I got plans, and it all's kind of getting thrown up in the air. I don't know where that's all going. And a lot of times you'll hear fear-mongering out there from some citizens and folks saying, hey, these are developers who just are out here to get the neighborhoods. And that's not the case. There's someone, a community member who wants a clear path to plan and design the house they want to build. There's also, my neighbors are out there, unfortunately, and they leave due to the lack of choices of housing. That's the reality out there. They need somewhere to move, and they would any day prefer to move in a better house. So coming to the next meeting, you'll see me there. I'll be there to discuss those specifics. I really look forward to that. The last thing I got to say is, take consideration of the facts that are out there and the time and process to go about doing this. So, and second, let's resolve the ADU issue. A lot of citizens put a lot of effort into that also last year, and that's still out there. So hopefully we can tie this into that. Thank you, Council.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Ms. Kim Calamino.
Good evening, Kim Calamino, 4070 Dover Street. I'm just here to say welcome, Mayor Starker, congratulations. Welcome, Councilmember Dozman, congratulations. And to encourage you all, those of you who are continuing and those of you who didn't have to run this time, I'm sure you were pleased about that, to look to each other to collaborate, look to your citizens to collaborate. I am so looking forward to the opportunities for us to engage together, for you to engage with each other and share your vision for the future of our great community. I also want to say I'm sorry they left, and I really appreciated Mayor Jay's leadership and Jen's leadership. I'm sorry that they're gone, so I couldn't thank them, but please, let's all work together. It's important that we listen to each other, collaborate, and lead together. And I just want to say, as we talk about transition of leadership, I would like to acknowledge the departure of Britta Fisher from leadership of Local Works. She's done a terrific job as a citizen leader in this community. I regret her departure, but I think she's done great things for us, and she's left behind a solid organization that will continue to serve this city. Thank you.
Thank you. That's all of the people that I had signed up on the list. Is there anyone else that would like to speak under public comment? Okay, we'll move to our next item, which is the approval of the agenda. Do we have any changes to the agenda? Seeing none, we'll move forward with the agenda as presented. Our first item will be introduced by Ms. Hoppy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ordinance for first reading, Council Bill number 18-2017, an ordinance amending Chapter 5 and Section 16-115 of the Wheat Ridge Code of Laws to authorize temporary waivers from the limitation on hours of construction activity.
On first reading, the typical procedure for the council is merely to take a motion to approve, because it, of course, be set for a second reading public hearing. It's always appropriate if council member, someone has a question on first reading to ask it, but in the absence of that, usually the next order of business is someone moving to approve it on first reading.
Ms. Hoppy, would you like to make a motion to that effect?
I move to approve Council Bill number 18-2017, an ordinance amending Chapter 5 and Section 16-115 of the Wheat Ridge Code of Laws to authorize temporary waivers from the limitation on hours of construction activity on first reading. Order it published. Public hearing set for Monday, November 27th, 2017 at 7 p.m. in City Council chambers.
Second. I'm sorry, raise your hand if you're the second. Ms. Duran is second. Is there any discussion on the motion? Will the clerk please poll the council?
Motion carries 8-0.
Thank you. Our item number 2 will be introduced by Ms. Dozman.
Item number 2, Council Bill number 192017, an ordinance amending Chapter 26 of the Wheat Ridge Code of Laws regarding small cell commercial mobile radio service facilities.
At issue.
During the 2017 Colorado State Legislative Session, the legislature adopted and the governor signed House Bill 171193 pertaining to small cell wireless service infrastructure. As it pertains to local governments, the bill does 2 significant things. 1, makes such facilities a use by right in all zoning districts, and 2, allows them to locate in public rights-of-way and on utility and traffic signal poles in those locations, and in public utility easements with some limitations and subject to city review and approval. City Council adopted local regulations on June 12, 2017, pertaining to the design parameters and approval processes for such facilities. An amendment is necessary to the definition of small cell facility to eliminate the potential for any large cellular facility to be considered a small cell facility.
A motion would be appropriate at this time.
I move to approve Council Bill number 192017, an ordinance amending ordinance number 1621 regarding small cell commercial mobile radio service facilities on first reading. Order it published, public hearing set for Monday, December 11th, 2017 at 7 p.m. in City Council chambers, and that it take effect 15 days after final publication.
Second.
Second by Mr. Urban. Is there any discussion on the motion? Would the clerk please poll the council?
Motion carries 8-0.
Item number 3 will be introduced by Mr. Urban.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Motion to amend contract for environmental and engineering consulting services for Phase 1 of the Wadsworth Boulevard Improvement Project with HDR Engineering Incorporated, Denver, Colorado, to incorporate
additional historic evaluation and redesign in the amount of $269,922. At issue, the April 2015, the city was awarded funding through the Denver Regional Council of Government Transportation Improvement to improve Wadsworth Boulevard from 35th to 48th. On October 12th, 2015, the council adopted the Planning and Environmental Linkages Study. The study identified traffic congestion and safety issues, developed multimodal solutions, and identified related environmental issues and mitigation measures that needed further assessment. On March 28th, 2016, council approved a contract with HDR to complete the survey, conceptual 30% design and plans, and prepare the environmental assessment. I'll leave it there and then allow staff to do the presentation.
As this is in first reading, I believe a motion would be in order? No?
Looks like
This is a motion.
Oh, okay, so do we have a presentation from?
We do. We have a short presentation from staff. We feel this, it's a good time to give an update on this portion of the Wadsworth reconstruction process.
So my name is Mark Westberg, for our new council person. I work in Public Works. I'm the project supervisor there. And I almost always have a PowerPoint. There's some groaning on the part of council sometimes, but it helps me stay focused. We're going to talk tonight about the historical reevaluation update on where we are with things, our funding, and our schedule also. All these things have been affected by this historical reevaluation that we've been undergoing pretty much all summer long. We reevaluated the designation of several properties from June through October. It's been a really arduous process working with our CDOT historian on this and trying to get to the point that she's accepting all the things that we're doing and trying to get those things on to the State Historic Preservation Office. We did get SHPO, the State Historic Preservation Office, concurrence on the eligibility in October. So that's a huge hurdle for us to get through that they've decided. We've all come to an agreement on which properties are potentially eligible to be historic and which properties are not potentially eligible to be historic. Before, during the PEL process that Councilmember Urban mentioned, we had one property on the corridor that was determined to be eligible, and now we have 5 additional properties. But we have 2 properties that were determined not to be eligible, and those are 2 fairly critical properties. So we consider that to be a little bit of a win for our project moving forward. They do have some significant impacts on design north of 44th, mostly to the stuff behind the curb. So far, we're able to keep all the lanes and the stuff that we've got between the curbs. It's the pedestrian and bicycle facilities behind the curb that are being impacted north of 44th Avenue. And we did submit what's called our effects letter to CDOT on November 3rd. There's sort of a 2-step process. First, you figure out which properties might be historic, and then you determine what your impact the project is having on those, and you try to mitigate those impacts such that you end up with a no adverse impact as our goal. If we end up with an adverse impact, we're sort of back to square one on trying to figure out what to do at that particular property. I got an email after I went home tonight after work, before I came here, that the CDOT historian is very busy, and we're number 4 on her list right now. And so she hopes to have our stuff looked at by the first week of December, not now. So we're really disappointed by that. It definitely has an impact on the schedule. And so that will then get submitted to SHPO in early December, and then they've got a 30-day window in which they do the review. And they generally get done a little bit quicker, but we pretty much need the entire 30 days to get through that process. So just as a reminder of sort of where we are, the Lutheran Church, this is the property that was deemed to be historic. This is the Lutheran Church on Wadsworth on the east side between 45th and 46th. This is the front area of the church, which is the part that's problematic for us in the design, because this was built when the church was built, so this is part of the historical nature of the church. It's not just the building itself, it's the sculpture and the plants and the concrete and everything out there in the front. And so we've prepared some photo sims. This is what it looks like today from just a little ways back on 45th Avenue. And then this is what it's going to look like with the project in there. We've got a short retaining wall. We've got to put handrail up because the wall is over 30 inches tall. And the portion of the project that is here, this is where the sidewalk would normally be. Because we get too close to this historical feature, we've got to wiggle the sidewalk up so that it's just 2 feet off of the curb. So we'll have some pattern colored concrete very similar to what's on 44th Avenue. west of Wadsworth, where we've got the colored concrete and then a very narrow sidewalk. This would still be a 10-foot sidewalk because it'll function as a multi-use trail to get people up to Clear Creek. Once we get around where the sign is for the church, the sidewalk can then wiggle back away and have that normal 10-foot separation and have the trees and the pedestrian lights and all those things. We don't have any pedestrian lights in this stretch in between because in the historian's concerned that'll affect the setting of what people are seeing of the church from the road. The nuances of this get very interesting as you continue on. The other 4 properties north of this location, just pretty much on either side of 47th Avenue that were all on the list for reevaluation. One of those, the Intermex building, was determined not to be potentially eligible, which was a good thing because the landscaping in front was thought to be original with the building, which means the grass and the bushes and the things in front of the building are part of the historical character of that building. So that one was not determined to be eligible, and so that was a good thing for us. The other 3 properties were determined to be eligible. I've got some more graphics on those. Just maybe as a reminder, the 1947 house, what we call the mid-century modern house there at the south side of 47th, that property was originally identified as a full take because the sidewalk literally goes right through the building if we put the sidewalk where we wanted to put it. So sort of the existing conditions there, this is what used to be the Arapahoe House. It's now Jefferson County Health Facility and Center, thanks. And then the Intermex building on the left side, and then this is the 2 houses on either side of 47th Avenue, the mid-century modern house on the south side and the bungalow on the north side. And so the mid-century modern house, this is what it looks like today. It's very obvious people are using this as a pedestrian path because there's a social trail there. There's dirt out in front where the people walk. And you can see the Jefferson Center in the background there also. And so what we've been forced to do at this location is to just build a 5 or 6 foot attached sidewalk, and even that gets to within 2 feet of the building. We really are not sure if that's going to be determined to be a no adverse impact on this building. If it is determined to be an adverse impact, we probably can't build a sidewalk here. At this point, we're not even really guaranteed we can get the 3rd lane of traffic at this location. So all this will come out during the evaluation. And then once we get to the Arapahoe House, the sign is part of the historical character of that building. We are going to move the sign back a little bit, but then we'll have that same sort of like 8-foot sidewalk plus 2-foot colored pattern concrete in front to give a little bit of separation there. But this is a really tough one because the folks using the sidewalk on the side are going to be forced to be walking next to a 3-lane roadway on a 6-foot sidewalk. It is not going to be a comfortable place to be. But at this point, this is the best we can do to try not to have an adverse impact. Looking north from 47th, this is the bungalow property. This nice big tree on the corner is not original to the property. It's something that's come up since, so it's not on the list to be saved. But this is what we end up with there. And again, the historian feels like the grass in front of this building is relatively historic because it's part of the original stuff. And so we have an 8-foot sidewalk with a 2-foot amenity zone at this location also. Once we get clear of this property, we can wiggle back and have the full 10-foot amenity zone and 10-foot sidewalk. But these are the things that we're proposing. We'll have to see how SHPO responds. We pretty much have agreement with the CDOT historian. We'll have to see how SHPO responds to this. And again, we hope to have that response sometime in early January. There were 3 other properties down by 3 Acre Lane. The 3 Acre Lane's here sort of in the middle. This is the credit union that was built relatively recently. This is the Dayco & Sons are there. They're a transportation maintenance group, I believe. This is there's a little coffee hut right here that just got a facelift. You're familiar with the area. This is the Denver Foursquare House, and then the Pyramid Law Building was also potentially on the list. It was determined not to be eligible, which was a really, really good thing for our project. The viability of our project was really in jeopardy if this property was determined to be eligible. The Wardle Feed Building behind it is definitely eligible given its historical nature and everything that goes along with it. The existing conditions at this location, this shows the Wardle Feed Building in the back and then the Pyramid Law Building in the front. There is some conversation in that report that goes to SHPO about the fact that if the city acquires this, are we going to tear down that building? Because the Pyramid Law Building is on the list for potential acquisition. And we said no, we would not, because they're worried that tearing down the building changes the view of the Wardle Feed that it's had since the Pyramid Building was built, and so that becomes an issue for us. So again, lots and lots of nuances on this. This is the Denver Foursquare House, this 2-story building here. The building itself is pretty historic, and the addition that was done to the front, because it was very typical of that time period, is also part of the historical nature. At this building and the Pyramid Building, our project actually proposes the sidewalk right up against pretty much their front doors. But because it's been asphalt out in front of those buildings forever, it's been determined we can go ahead and do that. So hopefully we can keep our project whole at this location and have the separated sidewalk in this area where we think we're going to have much higher pedestrian counts than we will up north. So for tonight, we're actually here to get to amend our budget and amend our contract with HDR, the consulting firm that's doing all this work for us. They're doing a really great job. Just sort of as a reminder, we originally had estimated about $1.5 million to do this EA, with about half of that for the environmental assessment, about half for the design budget. Where we've landed so far is with the consultant. We had originally signed that for $1.2 million with a contingency of $120,000. That money was used to sort of get us through the transition of getting from that PEL and getting the EA started. And then we came to you earlier this year, I believe it was May, to add about $180,000 for the additional historical work at that time that we thought we'd be required to do. We were not close. We also administratively approved a Tiger grant application. I'll talk about that more in just a little bit, for $40,000, which is why this is 1.54, not just 1.5, if you guys are doing the math in your heads really fast. So what we've got for this part of it is an additional fee of $270,000. The photo sims, which we think do a great job of telling the story of those properties, about the fact that, yes, we've got stuff here, but it really isn't changing the way it looks. Are very expensive to do, and we think our consultants did a great job of putting those together. And we've just had a lot of extra design work and a lot of extra looking at things to get to where we are today. That brings our contract to $1.81 million with HDR right now. Almost $1 million of that is for the environmental assessment part with all this additional historical stuff. And then our design contract has gone up a little bit from what we had before, just because of the additional design work we've got to do. And then also that includes that $40,000 Tiger grant application that we did. So our schedule for the rest of this environmental assessment with the conceptual design is, I had to change this tonight after my email, but we hope to have the historical stuff complete by January of 28. We're really, really hopeful, and I'm a huge optimist, so I'm really hopeful that the SHPO agrees with us on where we are with these no adverse impacts. If they do, we can have the historical stuff complete in January. We hope to then very quickly get the environmental assessment done in sometime in February. It takes about 4 months then to go through the review process between us looking at it, CDOT looking at it, and FHWA, the federal government, looking at it. And then we'd hold a public hearing, hopefully in July. In October, we hope to get what we call our FONSI, the Finding of No Significant Impact. That's our goal, is that our entire project doesn't have a significant impact on any environmental resources. We hope to have that now in October. And so then where we are with the overall budget is we had almost $32 million in the Transportation Improvement Program grant that we got originally back in 2014. Last December, we got a $2.6 million grant from CDOT by way of Highway Safety Improvement Program. And then CDOT has committed in writing now, we have it in writing, that they're going to give us $4.1 million that they were going to spend on some maintenance activities on Wadsworth in the upcoming year. So that we think that's a real win for us to get that maintenance money from them. What that gets us is nearly $40 million. And right now, and that's sort of the breakdown of all the stuff that we've got, the 7.25 is the combination of the money we've spent already on the city side plus the $7 million we got from 2E. We think this project is around a $50 million project with all the things that we've got going on right now, which is why we applied for a Tiger grant for $10 million. This is an incredibly competitive program. It was first started back during the Bush era, right after 2008 when everything hit. Tiger stands for Transportation Improvements Generating Economic Recovery. And so the goal is to try to generate economic recovery and do things that help that. The minimum grants amount, $5 million, because this is a big deal to get. It only, and I do reemphasize, only cost us $40,000 to do the application because of all the work we've already done. If you're starting from scratch, these applications are more like $100,000. They had $9.5 billion in grants submitted last year. They awarded $500 million. So it's extremely competitive. We think we hit all the criteria really well. We worked really hard to get our application up to the point that it happens. We'll know about this in March or April timeframe. We all this stuff goes into a black box, and then some things spits out 3 months later, and we know if we've got it or not. So we're really hopeful that we'll get that $10 million. It pretty much solves our funding that we think we've got with this project. And so that's sort of where we are. So the overall schedule is that we're going to come back to you probably in February. We want to get through this historical stuff before we come back with a design contract, likely with HDR because they're doing a great job for us, to go ahead and produce basically the construction plans for this project. And those are sort of the dates that we've got there. Right-of-way acquisition, we'd hopefully come back in the middle of next year, probably June or July timeframe, with a contract to acquire right-of-way. And then we'd hopefully have those right-of-way plans completed by November and have the acquisitions completed by July of 2019. What that allows us then is to start construction in October. We'd originally hoped to start construction in about January, so we're about 9 months late with all the things that have happened with the historical and some of the other things on this project. And that's all I've got, and just we have a couple of logos we like to flash up there. This is one of our Investing for the Future projects that we're throwing $7 million at to make all this stuff happen. And if you have any questions about all the stuff we've talked about, we can flip back through slides and talk about those.
Yeah, is there any? Thank you very much, Mr. Westberg. Ms. Duran.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mark, I have a question for you. You said a design plan is coming back in February, is that correct?
In February, the design contract.
Okay.
The contract to then hire HDR for about $2 million to produce the construction plans for this project.
So is the continuous flow lane still being looked at? What's the status of that?
Yes, those are still a part of this EA. They're part of the EA. So if the EA continues with those, and those are what continue through the EA, then that's what we would be building at 38th and 44th. And again, I want to sort of remind folks, we still have the video on the Wadsworth webpage. If you are interested in what a continuous flow intersection is and want to see how they work, it's not quite as good without me doing the play-by-play, but it's pretty good still. You can watch that and see what happens. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to send me an email or call me, and we can talk some more.
All right, thank you.
Ms. Hoppy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mark, on the sidewalks where they are right next to the road for those small stretches, have we considered anything like perhaps like a small like wrought iron decorative fence along there to kind of create some separation, or the loss of the 6 inches for that wouldn't be effective, or is that something that we've considered, some sort of separation between the traffic and that sidewalk?
We haven't considered that, and part of the reason is that then changes the view of the historical property from the street, and so that's where that becomes problematic. And you have to, whatever you do next to the road has to be 2 feet behind the road, so that someone with a mirror, a big mirror or something, doesn't clip it, or if someone runs onto the curb a little bit, presumably people can jump out of the way, but railings can't. So again, we think it's an awful situation, but right now that's our best shot of doing something. It might be likely that we just have to quit building sidewalk basically at the pawn shop, potentially, and not build sidewalk to the north for a couple of blocks, sort of as our worst case scenario.
All right, thank you for your work on this.
Mr. Matthews.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Since Ms. Duran brought this up, as far as the CFI intersections, there's a statement here that says in June of 2017, this design was confirmed by CDOT as the preferred alternative. I have talked to CDOT, and it's not their preferred alternative. And I've been hearing this back and forth. One side says the city wants it. One side says CDOT wants it. And I talked to the guy at CDOT, and he said they're not in favor of it. So can someone please help me out with this?
So the team that we're working with at CDOT, which includes their design folks and and the traffic folks and that kind of thing, the traffic folks in particular recognize the benefit of the continuous flow intersections from a traffic standpoint. The design folks see benefits of that also. Some of their maintenance folks are not in favor, in particular the snow plowing crews, because it greatly complicates the snow plowing at those intersections. But they've got 5 of these in Utah. They've had them there for several years. We've reached out to Utah. We're going to work through this issue that we've got with the maintenance folks on how in the world do we plow a CFI and make it work. And it just may be that CDOT's got to get some more resources put towards this part of Wadsworth to deal with the CFIs being there. We do have concurrence with the CDOT staff that we're working with. I'm not sure who it is you talk to, that has concurred that the CFIs are the preferred alternative for the EA evaluation moving forward.
Well, I didn't just talk to maintenance. I mean, I talked to someone on the design team, and I was given that phone number as a point of contact for the design work. And so I'm getting, and some say I would like someone to straighten out for me why I'm getting two different stories. And it's been for the last several months.
If you'd be willing to provide me that phone number and contact, I can certainly contact that person and find out what's going on and see where we are on things. From our standpoint, we're charging ahead with the CFI design because that's the direction we've been given from the CDOT staff that we're dealing with.
Ms. Davis?
So I have a question about the flow lanes as well, because I think, as we all know, our community is challenged with some of the change of the, if it's back-end parking or flow lanes. And, like I've said, I always want to be on the bubble of the forward bubble, but some of these bubbles where we go on is a difficult task for our community and adaptability. And I guess my question is if that was a preferred way, why didn't they do that up in Lakewood? I mean, I guess it would be nice if that were the case, that they would be doing it all down Wadsworth, so that at least if you're driving Wadsworth, you'd start getting used to those types of intersections. But I guess they just did all of that from, we all know from 6th Avenue all the way to Colfax. And so why didn't they consider it in other parts of Wadsworth if it's preferred?
So I was, and these are what you do at every intersection is very specific to those intersections. So we looked at whether we do them at 38th and 44th or both or either or none and all those things. And we looked at that as part of analysis. I wasn't involved in Lakewood's process of where they landed. Their environmental work for those projects was done several years ago. CFIs are a relatively new thing in Colorado. There's one in Loveland. There's a partial one in Colorado Springs. There's one in Durango. There's about to be 2 more in the metro area. They're going to do one on Santa Fe down going into Highlands Ranch. I think they've actually got 2 planned down there. There's also one planned out at Gun Club Road and Quincy, I believe, are the other 2 locations. So they are an up-and-coming thing. They're a relatively new thing. There's a couple in Missouri. They're not really super well known. I do want you to know that we did go drive the one in Loveland, and I drove the van that was doing it, and I think I've told council before, I am not a good driver, and I did not get confused, except one time. We're going to make sure that one time I got confused, we don't have that in our design.
So is the traffic count in Loveland the same as Wadsworth, though? I mean, I think it's one thing if you're kind of on an off, you could kind of figure it out, but if it's crazy traffic like Wadsworth, I mean, I guess you could say, well, we have that's in Loveland, but I can't imagine a street in Loveland that's like Wadsworth.
Yeah, again, the Loveland example is very different. It's one of their big east-west streets and a north-south street that only comes from one direction. That's why they put them in. They put a full CFI with right-turn bypass and all kinds of things that really complicate things. We've got a relatively simple CFI with just the left-turn bypass lanes. And really, honestly, from what we do today on Wadsworth, it's not going to be a huge change. I live west on 44th. I go home every day. I turn that left turn lane almost a quarter mile from the intersection. It'll be a very similar thing. You're going to turn in that left turn lane almost a quarter mile from the intersection, and then you'll be directed over with some really good signage, and we're looking at doing some in-pavement lights that'll help direct people. Even in the snow, it will help direct people to make sure they know where they're going and that kind of thing at night and that kind of that. So
Mark,
we don't think it's going to be a huge issue.
Why don't, just for memory, why don't you explain how we got to the CFIs briefly?
Yeah, so we started out with just adding double lefts at all legs of those intersections, right turn lanes, sort of a normal traditional intersection. And the intersections still fail before our horizon year of 2040. And they fail pretty miserably, almost as bad as they do today. And so that was part of the struggle. Do we go to triple lefts? Well, we really can't do that. What are we going to do with these? We obviously can't grade separate these locations. And so we had a new traffic engineer come on board just because of a staff change at our consultant. He suggested doing this simplified CFI. And so we went through the entire analysis, and it shows that these intersections, even with significantly more traffic than we have today, still working quite well in that out year of 2040 because of just the way CFIs work. And we've presented these at several public meetings and at several sort of neighborhood gatherings and things. And we show the video, we walk people through it, and at first they're going, what? And then when we walk them through the video, they're like, oh, well, that makes sense. This doesn't look too bad. So I get the concern. We had that concern at the very beginning, which is why CFIs didn't rise to the top of the list during the PEL process. But as we got through this process and realized doing a traditional intersection is not going to work at this location, we realized that CFIs were the best option of all the 50 things that we checked.
Mr. Matthews.
I really had intended to get into design issues here because these are a little different, but yet if we're going to spend a lot of money on historical concept and whatever, the design of those intersections does have a bearing. And apparently I'm not the only one that's concerned. My number one concern here, in a way, is that I get two different stories, and this has happened a lot in the last couple of years on developments. We hear one thing over here and another thing over here, and what we end up with may not even be the same. But I talked to Mr. Kevin Brown. He's not in maintenance. I got the number from our engineering staff to give him a call to get information about what CDOT thought about our design program. And he was definitely not in favor of it. So there again, I would like to see a resolution on this before we move further so that we all know who's on the same page. It appears to me that HDR is pushing it, and I don't know if the city is or if the city is just piggybacking on HDR.
Yeah, Councilmember Mathers, I can kind of answer that a little more. As Mark described, we went through the Pell process first, and what came out of that were the double left turns. And at the time, we believed that's what was going to go forward. When we got into the environmental assessment, the EA process, CDOT pushed back. And part of our frustration through this process is the players at CDOT have been changing through the game, and we've talked with CDOT quite a bit about that, all the way up to the higher levels. There's multiple people at CDOT involved. There's their traffic people, their right-of-way people, their operations people. It's not just about one person and what they think. But as we got into the CFI process, this was something CDOT asked us to evaluate, and as Mark said, through the evaluation, the intersections of 38th and 44th in particular, the ones that are really driving the problems with the congestion there, found that the CFIs worked better, and CDOT as a team went along with that and said, yes, this is what we need to carry forward through the EA. So it's been a process that's involved multiple folks, not just at CDOT, but the Federal Highway Administration as well.
Are we going to see a cost differential estimate between the two designs? That one costs A,
We've looked at that. We've looked at that, and based on the fact we're doing a simplified CFI, the cost differential isn't all that meaningful. There's a little more curb involved with doing the CFIs, but the amount of concrete pavement, the amount of right-of-way, and all those other things is pretty much a constant between those. So there's not a cost differential that's impacting the project.
Well, a set of signals costs $300,000, and we've got extra signals.
Yes.
Was that part of the cost estimate?
Well, in our original design, we had hoped to have signals in an eighth mile spacing, and so that was part of our original cost estimate, was to have all those. From what we did in the PEL, we don't have extra signals from that.
No, I'm talking about our final construction plans. What is going to be the cost differential? Not some pie in the sky or original, estimates, wannabes, but what's going to be the cost differential between the two designs? When they hit the ground with hard plans.
We're not currently evaluating that because the traditional intersections fail, and the feds have told us, and CDOT has told us, they will not sign off on this project if the intersections fail in 2040. So we cannot move forward with traditional intersections.
See, there again, I would like to get some information, if you can provide me with some names of the folks that you're talking to so I can talk to them.
Well,
so I can get to the bottom of this, he said, she said.
I thought we're getting pretty far down the process on this, and we've had numerous meetings and discussions with this. I thought there was an understanding that CFIs were part of it. My staff's not lying to you. We're working with a team, as Mr. Brink said.
And neither am I lying to you. Mr. Brown said
I'm not saying you're not lying to me, but
so I would like to find out, instead of me telling you, you tell me who at CDOT is in favor of this, because it's my understanding too that it's a state highway. CDOT's going to have the final say on what gets built out there.
That's what Mr. Westbrook just said. They're not going to approve the traditional
So I would just like to get this straightened out now before we spend a lot of money in the design phase and then have it all go kapoosh.
And we're telling you, Mr. Matthews, that this is what CDOT, working with the city, has told us, and they're supporting the CFI design at this time.
I'll talk to you offline. I'd like to have some contacts.
Are there any other comments from staff? Mr. Urban?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As it relates to this specific motion, my question is, as it relates to what's being asked in these task orders, what's our thought process on how does this get us to where we need to be, and that do these tasks, do we expect that this particular amendment to the contract will get us to the end, or will we be looking at an additional contract extension for issues regarding the CFI or other issues, or does this encompass the width and scope of everything that we need to do to sort of close out this element of the contract?
Given the fact that we've gotten concurrence with the CDOT historian on all of these sort of historical issues, we think this is it. The consultant has gone back and checked their numbers, and they think they can finish all the design work, and they can finish the EA, get it through the review process. With this additional money, they can do all that for that $1.8 million.
Okay, and then as it relates to this question of the PEL versus the EA and the question of the CFI, how is it that the PEL was approved by CDOT or by the Federal Highway Administration if the double turn lane wasn't acceptable in their eyes at that point? What changed between the PEL design and the EA design that caused CDOT or the Federal Highway Administration to no longer feel like that design was acceptable?
We were working with CDOT staff and moving forward with the design that we have with traditional intersections. Their traffic folks, for whatever reason, chose not to be involved until about the 11th hour of that project, and that's when they got involved and they said, wait, we can't do this with traditional intersections. It's not working. And so there was an agreement at that time that was made to go ahead and finish the PEL, because the vast majority of what's in the PEL, it's a 1.25 mile of corridor, doesn't change depending on what we do at those two intersections. The vast majority of it stayed the same. So they said, let's go ahead and approve the PEL. We'll resolve this issue with the two intersections at the very beginning of the EA process, which is what we did. And that $120,000 contingency we spent was part of that resolution to get to that point. And then we basically started the EA process after that got resolved, and that was where we landed on the CFIs.
Okay, so I guess where the rub is here is that I've never seen a situation where the PEL is so non-congruent with the EA, in that you have a completely different design in the EA than you have with the PEL.
And we've had several meetings with I want to call it maybe middle management at CDOT to talk about that issue and the fact that their staff didn't get engaged when they should have during the PEL. It was a bone of some contention with us from the city side, because we felt like we wasted the money we spent on the PEL. Again, the vast majority of what was in the PEL we were able to carry forward with. It was just those two intersections, and so we got together, we worked it all out, we got through our differences, and we got to the point that we're now working together as a team to make this project happen.
And from my perspective and from what I've heard is that it is something that CDOT isn't necessarily interested in doing either, and so I would like either some sort of letter or something in writing from CDOT saying that CDOT is the one that wants the continuous flow lane design, that they're the ones pushing for it, or that they're the ones who want to see this go forward as the preferred design, or if there's something in writing that we can get from them, or I don't know what it would take to receive that from CDOT, but it doesn't seem like that's the case at the present time.
And I think we have that documentation. In the memo I said in June of 2017, we got concurrence from CDOT to move forward with the CFIs. I will look for that document. I can certainly provide that to Patrick tomorrow, and we can get that out to everybody, and you guys can all see it. Again, the team that we're meeting with on CDOT, and this includes, Steve Harrelson, we've got Region 1 folks involved, directors and stuff. Kevin Brown is someone who's relatively high up in their food chain down there, but Kevin may just be expressing his own opinion or the opinion of some other folks at CDOT. The team of folks that we're working with have all agreed that CFIs, and CDOT's not pushing it, CDOT has agreed with us that it's the best design of all of the things that we've looked at to move forward with on this project. And that's why we're where we are today, or we wouldn't be spending all the time and money on this historical stuff if we still had issues with what we were doing at the intersections.
Thank you. Mr. Fitzgerald.
I just want to make a comment. I attended the public meetings, and my memory of those meetings were that people would go by the table, and they would in fact be mystified when they saw the plan because it's so different from what they were used to. But after they got an explanation of what it is, how it works, and why, most of them seemed to agree that we needed to handle the traffic. So The bottom line here is that people can adapt, and what we know for sure is that this will be better for the traffic in the long run. So,
Thank you. Mr. Westbrook, I had one question that was sort of concerning our contractual relationships with HDR and WSP. These are cost-plus contracts?
Yes, cost
and,
plus fixed fee.
And do we have a robust auditing procedure that's in place to sort of secure what
Yeah, so the folks that are involved in this are on the pre-approved list by CDOT to be on the list to do projects for CDOT, and that was part of a requirement when we sent out the RFQ back in 2015 or 14 or whenever it was. So these folks are all, and we're actually using CDOT's cost numbers for their hourly rates and everything else. So this is all stuff that's been very heavily vetted by CDOT, and that's part of, because we just don't have the staff to go through all of that. Sure. And so we don't have a pre-approval process for these things. We use the fact that CDOT's gone through that, especially on projects like this on a state highway.
And I guess my question has to do with after the work is done, when they build, do we have a procedure to check time cards and costs against their projected times?
Yes, I actually am the one that reviews all those invoices and looks at what they've done and looks at their scope of work and checks to make sure that they're within their scope of work still and all those things. And then after I review it, then we pay that invoice. We then send a pay request to CDOT, and my liaison down there then reviews all those invoices to the same level of detail that I do. And then once it leaves her office, it goes over in the business office, also reviews it against the federal guidelines and all that kind of stuff. So it's a three-step process between all three of us before we as a city get reimbursed and before those folks get paid.
Okay, and that documentation would include looking at time cards and what days people actually were at meetings and those that type of detail.
Yep.
Thank you very much. Are there any further questions from council at this time? Ms. Dozeman.
Could you just clarify why these properties weren't deemed as potentially historic properties in the first environmental assessment, and now why we are coming back and having to pay for it as the city after a 10-month long delay?
Also something that has been a bone of contention with us with CDOT. So CDOT has a new historian, is the short answer. And I've described her as very preservationist-minded, particularly of mid-century modern architecture. When we did the PEL study, we actually did more during the PEL than you normally would. We went to CDOT, we actually went to SHPO when it was determined the Lutheran Church between 44th and 46th was the only thing that was potentially historic. When we submitted the EA documentation, the historic stuff, their new historian had started, and she was in there about a month, and she said, we've got to relook at a whole bunch of properties through here. So that was pretty much why we landed where we are, and we've been very, very frustrated by the process.
So is it going to be taken into consideration that 1947 house on 47th Avenue has been vacant and is an area of blight? I like how the little chair on the patio was still in the picture when you.
If the picture was from this side, you see a rocking horse up on top of the roof that's up there. So no, that isn't. And that's a great question. This was asked when we talked about this in study session one time. The property owners really haven't even been contacted as a part of this process. The folks at the Mid-Century Modern House might want to sell their property, but that's not part of the process. This is an independent thing where by federal regulations, we have to determine that properties are potentially eligible to be deemed historic. That's the full language of where that lands. And if they are, then we have to protect those regardless of what the wishes of the property owner or, quite frankly, what the state of repair of that property may be in.
Thank you. Let's see if we can give Mr. Westberg a break on his vocal cords. Is there any other questioning that we want to go in? Mr. Urban, I believe a motion is in order.
One moment. Trying to get back to it. I move to amend the contract for environmental and engineering consulting services for Phase 1 of the Wadsworth Boulevard Improvement Project with HDR Engineering Incorporated, Denver, Colorado, to incorporate additional historic evaluation and redesign in the amount of $269,922.12.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, motion by Mr. Urban and second by Ms. Hoppy. Is there any discussion on the motion? So the motion, once again, is to amend the contract between the city and Environmental Engineering and Consulting Services. Ms. Hoppy.
Thank you. I was waiting for discussion because this is not a question for staff. But one thing I would just like to remind people is that please go to the city website and go to the Wadsworth page and please watch the video. I've driven through CFIs in Utah and they were mind-boggling, and people drive very, very fast in Utah. And so when I first heard about the CFI, I was very upset about it and I did not support it. But once I watched the video and I learned that our traditional intersections are going to fail too quickly, and that there are also other things about accesses to our businesses along that 1.5 mile strip that we will be able to keep because we're having the CFIs and the information that goes along with that. That is when I decided to support the CFIs. So please go to the webpage and take a look at the video, because honestly, right now trying to cross Wadsworth is like taking your life into your own hands, and these CFIs are going to change the pedestrian experience massively. So please take a look at that.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion on the motion? Will the clerk please poll the council?
Motion carries 5-2 with council members Dozeman and Matthews voting no. Did I say 5-2? I meant 6. Did I say 5?
You did.
6-2. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Okay, moving right along to item number 4. Mr. Fitzgerald, will you introduce this, please?
This is a bid motion. Motion to award ITB 17-20 Applewood traffic signal to WL Contractors, Arvada, Colorado, in the amount of $294,921 and a contingency in the amount of $29,492 for a total project cost of $324,413. The issue is this. Traffic volumes on 32nd warrant the installation of a traffic signal at Xenon Street. This intersection also serves as the south entrance to the Applewood Shopping Center. A cost-sharing agreement has been drafted with U.S. Retail Partners, LLC, the property owners of the center, for the design and installation of the traffic signal. The city agrees to design, construct, operate, and maintain the traffic signal. Bids were opened on October 24th, 2017, and came in higher than the engineer's estimate. Staff is recommending that the lowest responsive bidder, WL Contractors, be awarded a contract in the amount of $294,921 and a contingency of $29,492 for a project total cost of $324,413.
Thank you. Mr. Goff, do we have any presentation on this?
We can. Scott Brink and I here are both here to answer any questions. This is a little bit complicated, so if there's any questions, please ask.
Staff has offered to answer questions. Does council have any questions for staff on this matter?
I think maybe just for the mayor, Starker, for the public's involvement and knowledge, just to clarify that a portion of this is going to be paid through with the Wheat Ridge Urban Renewal dollars. So $110,500 is coming from the Urban Renewal Authority, coming from the tax increment that came off the Kipling Ridge project, which is the Sprouts project at 30th and Kipling. U.S. Retail Partners, who owns the Applewood Shopping Center, is also contributing as Mr. Fitzgerald read in this council action form. They are going to pay $84,392,000 towards this, but they're also getting a credit from the city of $58,500. U.S. Retail Partners provided some right-of-way along 32nd Avenue when we widened that project, that street several years ago. The agreement at that time was that the city would, in replace of providing that right-of-way, the city would provide them a small parking lot next to the Wells Fargo Bank. They decided they did not need that parking lot, so we gave them a credit towards the traffic signal. So the city's then portion of this will be $129,000. So it's a partnership between the Urban Renewal Authority, the city, and the U.S. Retail Partners, who's the ownership of the Applewood Shopping Center.
Thank you. And sort of once again, for the clarification of the audience, this would be a traffic signal on the entrance into the Applewood Shopping Center, right? From
Correct.
32nd Avenue. So
yep, the southern entrance.
If one were exiting south, then it might be easier and safer to be able to make a left-hand turn there.
Yeah, the signal has really been needed for quite some time. And the Regency Shopping Center if you've driven by recently, notice there's a couple changes. A new Starbucks at 32nd Youngfield, and then they're putting a fueling station in for the King Superstore, also adjacent to 32nd Avenue. So we require that as a condition of the fueling station that a traffic signal has to go in.
Okay, thank you very much.
A motion in order?
A motion is in order, Mr. Fitzgerald.
I move to award ITB 17-20 Applewood traffic signal to WL Contractors, Arvada, Colorado, in the amount of $294,921. I further move that a contingency amount of $29,492 be established, and that the Director of Public Works be authorized to issue change orders up to a total contract and contingency amount of $324,413.
Second.
Okay, a motion was made by Mr. Fitzgerald, seconded by Ms. Davis. Is there discussion on the motion? Seeing none, will the clerk please poll the council?
I'm sorry, I didn't.
Could the clerk please clear the board?
Oh, I'm sorry. Motion carries 8-0.
Thank you. We're moving on to item number 5. Ms. Duran, would you introduce this for us, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Motion to approve installation of traffic calming devices on Chase Street between 35th Avenue and 38th Avenue in accordance with the Neighborhood Traffic Management Program. Issue: residents on Chase Street petitioned the city to address traffic issues for the segment from 35th Avenue to 38th Avenue. In accordance with the city's neighborhood traffic management policy, the city met with the residents over the neighborhood meeting and subsequently discussed and devised a plan to mitigate traffic issues. The residents then secured a petition with the necessary amount of signatures supporting the installation of traffic calming devices, speed bumps, in accordance with the NTMP policy, and are hereby seeking approval for implementation.
Mr. Goff, do we have any staff report on this?
We don't, unless you have questions. Mr. Brink is here to answer any questions.
Mr. Brink, I'd like to bring something up that was mentioned under public comment. There seem to be some adverse opinions about traffic humps. Are you aware of this? And do we have other things that might work as well or better?
Yeah, well, maybe I'll give a little bit of history context here. Our neighborhood traffic management program was just resurrected a few years ago, back in 2014. The city did have a pretty robust program up until, I want to say, early 2000s, mid-2000s, and then for budget reasons, it was cut entirely. I believe there was even a traffic engineer, a staff person that was dedicated just to this kind of thing. As we got into more recent years, council staff was getting enough pushback from folks to resurrect this program because we were all getting a lot of requests, and the response was always, sorry, the program's been cut. Maybe we'll put you on a list and deal with it later. So we resurrected the program in 2014. It's a multi-step process. There's a request process that happens first. Then we host a neighborhood meeting, kind of get the neighborhood's feel for it. A lot of times the request is specific for speed humps, but one of the things we do at the meeting is just let the neighbors vent and first understand the problem. Is there really a problem? And if there is, what is it, and what's the best way to address that? Sometimes it's not speed humps. Sometimes it's something more benign, like with the speed trailer, better signage, striping, those kinds of things. More recently we did some curb narrowing up on one project. So there are options, and we present those, and we try and get a feel from the neighborhood where they want to go. Sometimes they, we get a few people that make the request, and the majority of the neighborhood says, oh, we don't see a problem and it doesn't go anywhere. And then other times we get residents that are very adamant about getting the speed humps in, and there is a petition process for that. 80% of the adjoining properties need to sign that, along with the person that would actually live by the traffic calming device. Some of these devices, say like curb bump outs, islands, those are options too. Sometimes those aren't popular because you take away parking on the street. We have to evaluate drainage issues too and make sure we're not messing anything up there. So we get mixed reactions on these. And I think the question came up, or the comment came up earlier about whether these are really effective or not. From what we've discovered locally and even from national studies, there's kind of a mixed bag, but in general, we find they do slow down the overall speeds, the average speeds. It doesn't stop the rogue speeder that is always going to drive 40, 45 miles an hour regardless what's there. And we make that clear to residents that this will probably bring down the average overall speed some, but you're still going to get speeding there. So I'm not sure if I answered the question or not.
Well, I think you got close. I had one other follow-up, if I might. Are we doing the solid asphalt speed humps, or are these what looks to be higher-end concrete and colored concrete speed?
Yeah, we've been going with the higher end lately, which is the concrete and the colored concrete. They're much more attractive and seem to fit in with the neighborhoods a lot better.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Ms. Davis?
So I just have a comment on the one on Balsam, which has been one of the newer ones since the program. I think part of the problem with the speed bumps, I mean, they are nice and they look nice, but they don't pack a punch. So yeah, if you're going 55, you're going to be able to go 55 and just kind of, whereas and I don't know what that looks like, and I think that's probably tough for the neighborhood too, if you had speed bumps that pack a punch. But I think that's part of it, is the speed bumps are there and they're nice, but I don't know if we're losing some of the effectiveness by having it look nice. That's just kind of by someone living in that neighborhood. What I see from some of the recent ones installed.
Yeah,
they do look nice.
Yeah, and we've had those comments too, and I will say the speed hump we put down, the design is based on a national standard, and the packing the punch thing part, yeah, that could be done, but these are designed, that there's vans that carry disabled people. I think part of it, reason it isn't as extreme as it is, it's being conscious of those, school buses. I know fire trucks generally don't like them. So I think with the design that came out of this through a national standard tries to take all those into consideration. But yeah, you're still going to get the hardcore speeders.
Thank you. Ms. Duran?
Thank you. Scott, I wanted to ask, so every request that comes in for some type of traffic calming device, it's assessed, right? Because the speed hump doesn't necessarily work everywhere. So there's options that are looked at and presented to the citizens, as I recall,
Correct.
as to what would work best for that particular area.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Yeah, every street and neighborhood is a little bit different too, looking at it from a context standpoint. So, we try hard to look at that.
Thank you. Any additional questions for staff? Ms. Duran, would you like to introduce a motion? Oh, yes, sir. Oh, sorry.
I was just going to ask if there have been any new traffic calming devices that have kind of been proposed from the community, because I have heard some very avid community members make very similar comments. So I'm just wondering if there are any new techniques.
Yeah. In fact, we just did put in something different up at the intersection. I believe it was 47th and Allison. We had kind of a big wide open intersection there that people were just flying through, even though there are stop signs there. So we did some curb work there to kind of better align and close up the intersection better. And then also move the stop signs, and it seems to be helping with that. So sometimes there's little tweaks like that. They can be expensive tweaks, but sometimes they're easy too. Sometimes it's just a matter of paint and repositioning some signs. So that's an example. And like I said, we just resurrected the program just a few years ago. So we're still tweaking it and trying to make it better as we go through as well.
Thank you. Any other questions? Mr. Rand?
Motion in order.
Yes, ma'am.
I move to approve the installation of traffic calming devices on Chase Street between 35th Avenue and 38th Avenue in accordance with the Neighborhood Traffic Management Program.
Second.
The motion's been made by Mr. Rand and seconded by Mr. Urban to install traffic calming devices on Chase Street. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Will the clerk please poll the council?
Motion carries 8-0.
Thank you. Moving on to item number 6, Mr. Pond.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm happy to introduce item number 6, a motion to approve the installation of traffic calming devices on West 35th Avenue between Ward Road and Union Street in accordance with the Neighborhood Traffic Management Program. At issue, similar to the last topic, residents on 35th Avenue petitioned the city to address traffic issues for segment from Ward Road to Union Street in accordance with the city's neighborhood traffic management policy. City met with the residents over a couple of neighborhood meetings and subsequently discussed and devised a plan to mitigate traffic issues. The residents then secured a petition with the necessary amount of signatures supporting the installation of traffic calming devices, speed humps, in accordance with the TMP policy, and are hereby seeking approval for implementation.
Thank you. Is there questions from council of staff on this matter? Mr. Bond, would you provide a motion?
Happy to. I move to approve the installation of traffic calming devices on 35th Avenue between Ward Road and Union Street in accordance with the Neighborhood Traffic Management Program.
Second.
The motion's been made by Mr. Pond and seconded by Mr. Urban to approve the installation of traffic calming devices on 35th Avenue between Ward Road and Union Street. Is there any discussion on the motion? Will the clerk please poll the council?
Motion carries 8-0.
Thank you. All right. We will move now to item number 7 on the agenda. Ms. Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Resolution number 42-2017, a resolution amending the fiscal year 2017 2E bond fund budget to reflect the approval of a supplemental budget appropriation in the amount of $772,534 for the payment of bond closing fees and principal and interest for the City of Wheat Ridge, Colorado Sales and Use Tax Revenue Bonds Series 2017A. At issue on May 2nd, 2017, the city closed on Series 2017A sales and use tax revenue bonds in the par amount of $30,595,000 with a net premium of, these are big numbers, so I have to practice all these numbers, $2,687,079 for a total of $33,282,079. Principal in the amount of $2.8 million and interest in the amount of $690,455 for a total of $3,490,455 is due on these bonds on December 1st, 2017. Whew, those are a lot of numbers. In addition, closing costs in the amount of $282,079 were incurred at closing. Therefore, a supplemental budget appropriation in the total amount of $3,772,534 is required to pay these expenses.
Thank you. Do we have a staff report? Or I see that our treasurer, Mr. DiTullio, is here. Mr. DiTullio, would you like to speak to this matter?
Yes, thank you. I passed out on your dais before the meeting this 2E budget report for financial report, and this is for September. But as we mentioned during the election for 2E and also after the election, that all of the funds for the 4 projects are stored in a separate location called CSAFE, which is a local government investing pool. And once this bond is paid, the funds will be reflected here as being paid on this report, which is also on the city's website. And by the ballot question, the highest the payment can be is the $3.7 million. That's what was limited by the ballot question. And so, like it was read by Ms. Davis, this payment will be the bond payment plus interest plus city and closing costs, and that'll be the maximum amount of 3.7 allowed by the ballot question. So in December, when we have this report come out to you on the website, you'll see that payment made and all the expenses that or with those 4 projects are also listed on this separate reporting document for the public and for council. The one thing I wanted to mention too, just real quickly, is you look on year-to-date for interest income, the $33 million that was deposited into the account for the bond sale, the city has earned $150,000 and 366. That money can also be applied towards that item that was approved tonight for the historical properties. So the $269,000 that's being budgeted, it should come out of this fund because this is all 2E funds, and we've earned almost over half of that $269,000. So it won't be as much as it looked. And so the good thing about C-Safe is that we're earning a higher interest rate. It's almost 2% as compared to regular banking institutions that are PDPA insured. So if you have any questions?
Any questions for Mr. DiTullio or any other staff on this matter? Mr. Urban.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. DiTullio, as it relates to the expenses within the 2E projects, how do we determine that these expenses are within the acceptable realm as it relates to the bond, and making sure that they are expenses that are eligible within the bond? Or how does that come about? Or is there any protocols that we use to determine that, yes, these expenses are eligible expenses within this particular program?
Well, all the expenses are being paid through the treasurer's office once staff, the Parks Department or CDOT is signed off on those expenses. Like was mentioned earlier, for example, on the Wadsworth, that's going to be reviewed 3 times by 3 different entities before it comes to be paid or reimbursed. And so, for example, even the interest, like we had mentioned when the bonds were issued, even the interest has to be applied towards only 2E projects. So the city staff and then and council, like as you approve these projects, are reviewing the funds and how much is being spent and what was budgeted. So right now we have on this report what's been budgeted. So that's actually what it says here on 2017 adopted. That should say adjusted, but that's actually what council approved in 2017 for the expenses. And then on the right is the year-to-date and the actual expense. So as you approve expenses and payment, it's going to show up on this right-hand side of this report, and you'll see where if you've exceeded it or not. And like it was mentioned earlier, 2 weeks ago, council had to approve this amendment because this wasn't budgeted for 2017, the $3.7 million, but in 2018 budget, you won't see these payments coming as they're twice a year, semi-annually. So that should be already budgeted in the 2018 budget. But as we pay, as you approve, council approves, this report shows you what you've actually spent on each project. And they're all broken down, all 4 of them.
Thank you.
Mr. DiTullio, I had a question on the interest that we're making on the bond sales that we've made. Is that interest earmarked on a prorated basis for each of the 4 projects under the 2E program, or is it available for any?
It's available for any project.
Okay, thank you so much. Are there any other questions for Mr. DiTullio or any other staff on this matter? Okay, Ms. Davis, I believe a motion is in order.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to approve resolution number 42-2017, a resolution amending the fiscal year 2017 2E bond fund budget to reflect the approval of a supplemental budget appropriation in the amount of $3,772,534 for the payment of bond closing fees and principal and interest for the City of Wheat Ridge, Colorado Sales and Use Tax Revenue Bond Series 2017A.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Motion made by Ms. Davis and seconded by Mr. Urban. Is there any discussion on the motion?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I would just like to thank the city treasurer, Mr. DiTullio, because I think he does an excellent job of giving us financial reports, and I do appreciate that.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Madam Clerk, will you please poll the council?
Motion carries 8-0.
Thank you. Our next item is number 8. Mr. Matthews.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Each year, city council members nominate and elect by a majority vote a mayor pro tem who serves until their successor is elected. The election is conducted according to Section 3, Article B of the City Council Rules of Order, and the procedure is as follows. And at the first second regular meeting in November of each year, the council shall nominate and elect by motion upon a majority vote a mayor pro tem who shall serve until their successor is elected. The procedure is as follows. The presiding officer will announce to the floor is open for nominations. Nominations will be taken from city council members by voice. No second is needed. Each nominee will have the opportunity to address the council. Each council member will mark the paper ballot with the name of the nominee they wish to vote for, fold the paper in half to ensure secrecy. The city clerk will collect the ballots, tally the results, and return the written name of the majority vote receiver to the presiding officer, who will announce the highest vote getter. The presiding officer, the mayor, will break a tie, and then we will have a motion to make the results official.
Thank you, Mr. Matthews. I would like to announce that the nominations are open for the position of Mayor Pro Tem. Mr. Pond.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm happy to nominate Tim Fitzgerald.
Okay, are there any other nominations? Ms. Duran.
Yes, I'd like to nominate Councilor Urban.
Mr. Urban. Are there any further nominations? Seeing none, I will close the nominations. Mr. Urban, would you like to make a statement?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As a council member for the past 4 years, I feel like I've done a good job in both being present and active during the meetings and also being well-versed in the art of parliamentary procedure and being able to guide the meeting effectively as it relates to my role in the meetings. And as your Mayor Pro Tem, I feel like I could do that job effectively, both educating the new members on council, as that's part of the role, but also in making sure that the meetings are run smoothly and that our parliamentary procedure is adhered to. So I would very much enjoy serving you all in that role, and would appreciate your vote.
Thank you, Mr. Urban. Mr. Fitzgerald, would you like to make a statement?
I think the two most important aspects of this job are, as Mr. Urban has indicated, parliamentary, being the parliamentarian of the organization. And parliamentary procedures are an important part of any organization. On the other hand, they have to be applied judiciously, since I think discussion sometimes is valuable despite the fact that it's a little bit out of order. So I would apply the parliamentary system judiciously. The second part of this job really is the agenda part. And I think what is needed in planning our agenda is something we've had in recent months, is a fair application of needs for the agenda. So people from every point of view have had the ability to put things on the agenda and to suggest things for the agenda. So my objective would be to be fair and even-handed in doing that.
Thank you, Mr. Fitzgerald. All right, we have nominations of Mr. Fitzgerald and Mr. Urban. Would you please mark your ballots, fold them in half, and the clerk will collect them. Or if you would like to pass them to me, and I will deliver them to the clerk.
You don't have one?
I don't have one, you know. Oh.
Yeah, see, Leah?
Okay.
Does everyone, you should all have one in your packet. Do you have one?
Only in the case of a tie.
like the Jeopardy song or something? Dun, 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 dun.
I think you give it back to her.
Do I give it back to the clerk? Okay.
But aren't you supposed to announce?
It says the city clerk will collect the ballots, tally the results, and return the written name of the majority vote receiver to the presiding officer, who will announce the highest vote getter.
The ballots have been tallied. Mr. Urban, 4 votes. Mr. Fitzgerald, 5 votes. Mr. Fitzgerald is elected the mayor pro tem. Congratulations.
Actually, you need to take
Okay.
a motion now. Under the council rules, this now sets up the recommended candidate, but as the council rules, as council recall, I think we revised them about a year ago or so, it's clear that while you were encouraged to confirm the nomination unanimously, however, you're not required to vote for this person. If the motion is not carried, additional motions are in order until Mayor Pro Tem is elected by a majority of the council. So, and a majority, in this case, if there is a tie vote, the mayor is required by the charter to break that tie.
Do I have a motion to elect Mr. Fitzgerald the mayor pro tem by acclamation?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I move to elect Councilman Tim Fitzgerald as Mayor Pro Tem, effective immediately, term to expire upon election of their successor.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Matthews, second by Ms. Davis. Is there any discussion on the motion? Will the clerk please poll the council?
A motion carries 7-1 with Councilmember Duran voting no.
Thank you. That concludes our, whatever we call that part of the agenda. I'm
regular
not quite
business
sure what
meeting?
that's not in my notes. But
Yes.
right now, we're going to move on to city manager's matters. Mr. Goff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple updates. Some good news that you may have seen in the Denver Post, the Colorado PUC has agreed to hold a public hearing to reconsider their decision on the waivers that RTD asked for on the A and G line. So there's no date yet. There's a process, a 10-day notice process before they'll set a date. So that 10 days hasn't expired. So as soon as we have a date, we'll make sure that you all get that. And then also, our police department is hosting a community forum this Wednesday evening. This forum is on homelessness, and it's this Wednesday, November 15th at 5:30 here in City Council chambers at City Hall. So please come out to that if you have time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Goff. City attorney matters, Mr. Dahl.
Nothing substantive other than to congratulate the incoming members, Ms. Dozman and Mr. Starker, and to tell all of you I very much am honored to serve for you, and I look forward to working with you in this next term. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Goff. Elected official matters, Wheat Ridge Treasurer, Mr. DiTullio.
Thank you. I also wanted to congratulate everybody who got elected or reelected. And when Mr. Dahl and I were here, he had blonde hair and I had brown hair. So it's been a few years. We started at the same year, 1995. Just quickly, I passed out this report. On the first page is your 2E information for September. On the subsequent pages is the financial report for September for the regular city budget, and it's September only. For our new elected officials, the 2E funds are completely separate from the general fund. They're not commingled. They're even stored and earning interest in a different bank. So to be transparent and to keep things clear, when we do the transfer for our bond payment, the money will come directly out of CSAFE, wire transferred over to the bond council. So it won't even hit the current checking accounts funds. It's all completely transparent and not commingled. So if you have any questions, I really would suggest that all these reports are on the website now. There's quite a few of them, and as you have your town meetings, neighborhood meetings, that you take advantage of this information, because it's always good to have the actual numbers rather than someone saying, oh, they spent $4 million instead of $3 million, or whatever the issue is. This is pretty clear information that comes out of our accounting system. We're on September only because we've had some turnaround in the accounting department, so we should be able to get October soon posted as well. The Fruitdale School redevelopment project is pretty much completed. There was some residual interest left over from that at Citibank, and I'm working with the Community Development Department to see if that interest is part of that project, or if that interest comes back to the city of Wheat Ridge. Some interest was earned. What's that, Patrick? Does it come back to us?
It goes back to the general fund, yes.
Okay, so there was probably $6,000 to $10,000. I got to check the numbers recently, but that interest that was earned on that money that for the Fruitdale will come back to our coffers here in the next few weeks or months, depending on when we can close out that account, make sure that the project is done for Fruitdale.
Thank you very much. Mr. Matthews?
If I could quickly, do we have any projections on potential shortfall with the closing of Wadsworth on our budget and sales tax revenue?
I can't give those specific numbers because of the confidentiality, but is that what you're asking on? Shortfall of total general fund or specific to Walmart?
Well, let's just say I would like to know how our estimated sales tax revenues are going to suffer for the whole city.
Yeah. No, good question, Mr. Matthews, and I was going to report out on that tonight also. I didn't get those numbers, but I'll do that. I just looked at, as Mr. DeTulia mentioned, we just finished our September financials, and total sales tax through September is actually up 2.8% over last year. So that includes the closure of Walmart on July 7th. So I actually looked at our top 30 revenue generators, not just sales tax, but larger sales and use tax, and majority of them are up over last year. So it's looking good, even with the closure of Walmart. So I'll get a more official report out with some exact numbers.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Ms. Shaver, do you have any report for us?
Tonight, thank you.
Thank you so much. We will go to elected official matters. Mr. Ann?
Thank you. I just want to say congratulations to our new members and our members that were reelected. Look forward to working with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Hoppy?
Thank you. I just would like to say congratulations and very good job to all of the students over at Wheat Ridge High School this evening that were receiving their Academic Excellence Awards. And so I know that a lot of students work very hard to get those awards, and I'm very proud of all of them.
Mr. Urban?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's kind of hard to get over saying Madam Mayor versus Mr. Mayor, but I think everybody's been
Either way we'll be fine.
everybody's been on point. So I just wanted to say thank you to everybody who ran for office this go around, and as well as everybody who voted in this election. Very much appreciate everybody's participation in that, and that means a lot to those of us that have put ourselves out there to be elected, and thank everybody who participated in that, and congratulate everybody who was elected and who continues to serve. Appreciate your service to our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Pond?
Thank you. Well, I want to echo what everyone said, and welcome everyone, especially to the new members up here on the dais. But for everyone who ran, I'm not the only one up here, I won't call out names, but who has run in this city and lost, and yet came back again and sitting up here. And I think that means a lot. It means, that a lot of us, fundamentally, we have common ground, and that is we care about this city. And we're showing up to knock on doors and to make ourselves vulnerable to it, and that's what binds us. I hope we just remember that. I know we don't always agree on everything, but just thanks for everyone who ran, who continues to run, who continues to show up, to speak at our podiums, to come to our meetings, to watch on on Channel 8 and to participate. Maybe it's not easy sometimes, but just want to thank everyone for being active and doing it. Thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Dozeman.
I would just like to thank everybody for the warm welcome, especially city staff for kind of getting me up to speed, and all of the elected officials that have already sat down with me or spoken to me. I would also like to thank the city of Wheat Ridge for giving me the opportunity to represent you, and to my opponents that ran great campaigns, and for staying actively involved in the community. I'd really like to thank everybody that gives their all to the city, because I know that we do have a lot of common ground and that we all do love where we live, and hope to make it a better place for tomorrow. So really just thank you, and I look forward to working with you.
Thank you. Mr. Matthews.
I know a couple of people were expecting me to read some excerpts from some things they sent me. My computer gave me the blue screen of death late last week and early this week, so I have not recovered everything there, and I will read them at another time. So it's just for you folks out there in TV land that were looking for it. I have not forgotten you. And also, Ms. Dozeman and myself will be setting up a District 4 meeting. I had held off until after the elections, so we will be doing a joint meeting soon. Date and time and place to be announced.
Very good. Mr. Fitzgerald.
I would like to echo what people have said, and I welcome you, Leah and Bud. I'd also like to thank the people who ran for election and lost. It is a difficult thing to do. And I'm reminded, I can't remember who said this. I'm thinking Benjamin Franklin, but I could be totally wrong. Democracy is a wonderful thing if you can keep it. And it's absolutely necessary for people to run for office, take part in the process for democracy to work. So I do congratulate people.
Ms. Davis.
So I would like to echo what everyone has said. Congratulations to the newly elected and the re-elected. Re-elected. So congratulations to you all. And I also want to let folks know that the Catch Up with Christie 2018 will be coming. Hope to have postcards out probably at the beginning of the year that will have 4 set meetings for the year. So there'll be different times like they always have been, as far as maybe some weekends, some later evenings in different places, so that we can see some of our businesses, support some of our businesses, and catch up with Christie and the city.
Thank you very much. And I would like once again to thank all of the electors in Wheat Ridge who cast their ballots. I think it's very important for our democracy. It's a cornerstone of our freedoms. To the candidates who ran, thank you for running. To the candidates who won, congratulations. To all the other members of council, I look forward to working together with you. I'm even more humble and thankful and nervous, I guess, as the time goes on, but I hope we have productive meetings and can work and discuss and collaborate together in a good spirit, and I look forward to seeing you all back here very shortly. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Good first meeting.